The amuse-bouche arrived on a slate plate, artistic and pretentious in the way that always made me roll my eyes internally while maintaining my professional expression. Seared scallop with citrus foam and microgreens that probably cost more per ounce than gold. I lifted my phone discreetly, angling for the overhead shot that my Saint Courant 000 Instagram followers expected. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. Exquisite presentation. I murmured to my dining companion, or rather, my cover. Tonight, that was James, my magazine's photographer, playing the role of date while his actual camera stayed hidden in the messenger bag at his feet. Pretentious as hell, he whispered back, which was why I liked working with him. I set down my phone and lifted my fork. This was the 3rd restaurant this week, the 14th this month. Maya Santos, senior food critic for Palette Magazine, professional opinion maker, destroyer of mediocre kitchens, champion of hidden gems. That was the public persona. The private reality was more complicated. I touched the fork to the scallop, noting the perfect sear, the delicate bounce of fresh seafood. Everything about Osteria not screamed money, old money trying to look like new money, trying to look artisanal. Exposed brick walls that had probably cost a fortune to expose. Edison bulbs hanging at carefully calculated heights. A wine list that could fund a small country's GDP. The scallop melted on my tongue. Perfect, damn it. I hated when restaurants I was investigating turned out to actually serve good food. Well? James asked, playing his role. I paused, searching for the words that would sound natural to nearby tables while conveying information to James. Surprisingly legitimate. The technique is flawless. His eyes flickered with understanding. We'd developed a code over the past 3 months. Legitimate meant what it said. This restaurant, whatever else it was, took its food seriously. That complicated things. I took another bite, smaller this time, letting the flavors develop. Citrus, butter, a hint of something herbal I couldn't immediately place. Tarragon? No, something more subtle. My phone buzzed against the table. I glanced down at the screen. Restricted number. You should have stayed away from this one. My blood turned cold. I kept my expression neutral. Years of reviewing under pressure serving me well. Never let them see you rattled. Never give away what you're thinking. Everything okay? James asked, his casual tone not matching the concern in his eyes. Fine, I said, setting the phone face down. Just my editor being demanding. But it wasn't fine. Someone knew. After 3 months of careful investigation, of building a case through financial records and anonymous tips, of tracking the money flowing through a chain of high-end restaurants across the city, someone knew what I was really doing here. The waiter appeared at my elbow, silent as a ghost. How are we enjoying the amuse-bouche? Delightful, I said automatically, my critic's smile firmly in place. The scallop is perfectly executed. Chef Renzo will be pleased to hear it. The waiter, his name tag read Marco, smiled with practiced warmth. Your first course will arrive shortly. The diver scallop crudo with blood orange and Calabrian chili. More scallops. I made a mental note. Push the seafood. It's expensive, high margin, smart, from a business perspective. Also smart if you're laundering money through food costs. Claim you're buying premium seafood at premium prices, pocket the difference, serve good but not great product that most diners can't distinguish from the truly elite stuff. Except tonight's scallop had been truly elite. Marco retreated with that peculiar walk servers develop quick but not rushed, attentive but not hovering. I watched him go, then let my gaze drift across the restaurant's main dining room. Osteria Notte was packed for a Tuesday night. That alone was suspicious. Good restaurants did well on weekends, but Tuesday? The crowd was wrong too. Too many men in expensive suits having quiet conversations. Too many women who looked like they were decorative accessories rather than genuine diners. Too much careful spacing between tables. Too much privacy being maintained. This wasn't just a restaurant. It was a meeting place. Neutral ground. My eyes caught on table 9. I'd noticed him when we arrived. Impossible not to. He sat alone at a foretop near the back corner, the worst table in the house from a prestige perspective, but the best for visibility and access to exits. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, all sharp angles and controlled intensity. His suit probably cost more than my car. He ate slowly, methodically, his attention seemingly focused on his phone, but I'd been watching. people for too long not to notice the tells. The way his eyes flickered up every time someone entered or exited. The subtle hand gesture that had sent his waiter away twice. The careful positioning of his water glass and wine arranged so nothing blocked his sightlines. Dominic Valente. I knew him from my research, though we'd never met. 38 years old. Owner of the Valente Hospitality Group, 16 restaurants across 3 states, all high-end, all profitable. Also, according to my carefully compiled evidence, the largest money laundering operation in the tri-state area. The man I'd been building a case against for 3 months was sitting 50 feet away, and someone had just sent me a warning to back off. Maya. James's voice pulled me back. You're doing the thing. What thing? The thing where you stare into space and I can practically hear your brain working. People are going to notice. He was right. I shook myself mentally, reaching for my wine. The Vermentino was crisp and mineral, probably from Sardinia, definitely overpriced at $8 a glass. Sorry, I said. Just thinking about the review structure. Sure you were. James leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice. We can leave. Just say you're not feeling well. I should leave. The smart play was to leave. Someone knew I was investigating, knew what I'd found. The anonymous text wasn't subtle, it was a threat, but I'd been chasing this story since my sister died. Elena, 23 years old, bright and alive and gone in a single night because of tainted fish at a restaurant that should have been shut down months earlier. The health department had taken bribes to overlook violations. The restaurant's owners had connections that kept them insulated from consequences. By the time anyone acted, 3 people were dead from scombroid poisoning, including my little sister. That was 7 years ago. 7 years of watching restaurants fail people, of seeing corruption go unpunished, of knowing that the systems meant to protect diners were broken beyond repair. So I'd stopped waiting for the system to work. I became a food critic, so I could investigate from the inside, so I could expose the truth about places that hurt people while hiding behind white tablecloths and tasting menus. Osteria note was the keystone. If I could prove what I knew about Valente's operation, if I could show the paper trail and the patterns, I could trigger investigations into every restaurant in his group. Real investigations, federal level, too big to bribe away. I'm fine, I told James, just being paranoid. The first course arrived. The crudo was arranged like modern art, translucent scallop slices, blood orange supremes, a scatter of chili threads, droplets of emerald oil forming a constellation on the white plate. I photographed it, aware of Marco hovering nearby, waiting for my reaction. Stunning, I said, meaning the presentation. I lifted my fork. The first bite was revelatory sweet scallop, tart citrus, subtle heat building. The second bite reinforced my first impression. This was exceptional food, real craft, real passion. The third bite tasted wrong. Nothing dramatic, just a slight bitterness underneath the other flavors. Metallic, almost. I paused, fork halfway to my mouth for the fourth bite. What is it? James asked. The chili oil, I said slowly. It's off. Not spoiled, just bitter. You want to send it back? I should. That's what a normal food critic would do. But something in my gut was screaming at me that this wasn't a kitchen mistake. I set down my fork and reached for my water glass. My hand was shaking slightly. That was wrong. I didn't shake. I'd reviewed restaurants in war zones, had faced down screaming chefs, had maintained composure through food poisoning, kitchen fires, and a memorable night involving an armed robbery. I didn't shake. Maya? James's voice sounded distant, like he was speaking from the end of a tunnel. The water glass slipped from my fingers. It didn't shatter, the carpet was too plush, but water spread across the white tablecloth in a dark stain. I don't feel well, I heard myself say. The room tilted. Not dramatically, just a subtle shift, like the floor had become a ship's deck in gentle swells. My vision remained clear, but my peripheral perception was compressing, reality narrowing to a tunnel. Poison. The word arrived in my consciousness with absolute clarity. This wasn't food poisoning, wasn't an allergic reaction. This was deliberate. Someone had poisoned my food. My mind raced even as my body began betraying me. Symptoms, tremor, vision changes, confusion beginning at the edges, rapid onset. I'd been fine 2 minutes ago. That meant fast acting. That meant lethal if untreated. How long did I have? 10 minutes? 20? How long until James figured out what was happening and called an ambulance? 5 minutes to realize, 3 to call, 15 to 24. Emergency response in this part of the city at this time of night. I'd be dead before they arrived. James was standing, his chair scraping back. Maya, what's wrong? Poisoned, I managed to say. My tongue felt thick, clumsy. The crudo, poisoned. His face went white. Around us, other diners were beginning to notice. A woman at the next table half rose. Marco was rushing over, professional concern on his face that might have been genuine or might have been acting. Miss Santos, what can I call 911? James was saying, his phone already out. She's having a reaction to something. Reaction, not poison. He didn't understand yet. I tried to explain, but words were becoming difficult. The room was darkening at the edges, not going black but losing detail, color bleeding away to leave only shapes and shadows. 20 feet away, Dominic Valente was watching. Our eyes met across the dining room. I saw recognition there. He knew who I was. Of course he did. I'd been investigating him. For months. He'd probably known from the beginning. He'd probably ordered this. No. Some instinct deeper than logic rejected that thought. If Valente had wanted me dead, I'd have disappeared quietly. This was public, messy, traceable. This was someone else's play. But Valente had resources. Valente had doctors on call, medical facilities that didn't ask questions. Valente could save me if he chose to. The question was, would he? My hand fumbled for my napkin. Fine linen, expensive, monogrammed with the restaurant's logo. My fingers wouldn't quite cooperate, but I managed to grasp my pen. I always carried one, habit from years of taking notes. James was talking to 911, giving our location. She's having trouble breathing. Her hands are shaking. She says she was poisoned. I pressed pen to napkin, fighting my own nervous system to form letters. P-zoned. My handwriting looked drunk, letters wavering and uneven, but legible. Barely. Marco was beside me now, all professional concern. Miss Santos, let me help you. I pulled away from him. Couldn't trust anyone here. Couldn't trust anyone in Valente's restaurant, except maybe Valente himself. I didn't let myself think about the insanity of what I was about to do. Didn't let myself consider the implications or the alternatives. I just acted. With strength I didn't know I still had. I stood. The room spun violently, and I grabbed the table edge to stay upright. James reached for me, but I shook him off. Maya, sit down. The ambulance is. I took one step, then another. My legs felt disconnected from my body, operating on autopilot and prayer. The distance to table 9 was maybe 20 feet. It felt like miles. Diners were staring now. The whole restaurant had noticed something was wrong. Perfect. Witnesses. If Valente killed me, he'd have to do it in front of 50 people. 10 feet. My vision was narrowing further, the tunnel getting smaller. 5 feet. I could see Valente clearly now. He'd set down his phone. His dark eyes tracked my approach with absolute focus. I reached his table and thrust the napkin toward him with shaking hands. Poisoned. He took it. Read it. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Calculation. Lightning fast. Please, I managed to whisper. The word cost me everything I had left. Dominic Valente stood in one smooth motion. He was taller than I'd realized. Or maybe I was shrinking, the world collapsing inward. How long? His voice was a low rasp, calm despite the chaos building around us. 5 minutes. Since. I couldn't finish. Couldn't make my mouth form the words. He caught me as my legs gave out. One arm around my waist, supporting my weight like I was made of air. His other hand already had his phone out. Marco, he said, his voice cutting through the restaurant noise like a knife. Lock the doors. No one leaves. Call Vincent and tell him to bring the car to the front entrance. Now. Sir. I don't think. Now. Marco ran. Valente's attention returned to me. Stay with me. What did you eat? Crudo. I slurred. Bitter. Metallic. Arsenic or thallium. Maybe cyanide, but you'd be dead already. He wasn't asking, just categorizing. His arm tightened around me. My doctor is 8 minutes away. Can you hold on for 8 minutes? Could I? I didn't know. The darkness was eating more of my vision. My heart was racing, or maybe slowing. I couldn't tell anymore. Why? Help. The question emerged as barely more than breath. His jaw tightened. For just a moment, I saw something raw in his eyes. Anger. Real. Volcanic fury. Because someone tried to kill you in my restaurant, he said quietly, so only I could hear. No one kills anyone in my restaurant without my permission. Not the reassurance I might have hoped for, but honest at least. And, he added, even quieter, because I know who you are, Maya Santos, and you're worth more alive than dead. I wanted to ask what he meant, wanted to demand explanations, wanted to do so many things. But the darkness was winning, dragging me down despite my resistance. The last thing I heard before unconsciousness took me was Dominic Valente's voice, sharp as broken glass. Someone in my organization just made a fatal mistake. Find out who. Then nothing. Consciousness returned in fragments. Voices first, low and urgent, the smell of antiseptic. Something cold pressed against my inner arm and eyeline, my foggy brain supplied. Then pain, dull and pervasive, like my entire body was one massive bruise. I tried to open my eyes. The lids felt weighted with lead, heart rate stabilizing. A woman's voice, clinical and calm. Blood pressure coming up. She's responding well to the chelation therapy. How long until she's conscious? That voice I recognized. Dominic Valente. Could be minutes, could be hours. The arsenic levels were significant but not immediately lethal. Another 10 minutes without treatment. The woman didn't finish, but the implication hung in the air. I'd have been dead. I forced my eyes open. The light was dim, thank God. But even so, it felt like knives piercing my skull. I was in a bedroom, no. A medical room designed to look like a bedroom. Expensive art on the walls, but also monitoring equipment. An IV stand. A crash cart discreetly positioned in the corner. She's awake. The woman appeared in my field of vision. 50s, gray hair pulled back, wearing surgical scrubs under a white coat. Miss Santos, I'm Dr. Reeves. You were poisoned with arsenic trioxide. We've administered dimercaprol and you're responding well. Can you tell me your full name? Maya. Elena. Santos. My voice sounded like gravel scraping concrete. Good. Do you know what day it is? Maya. Tuesday. No. Wednesday now? How long had I been unconscious? Very good. Any numbness, tingling, difficulty breathing? I did a mental inventory. Everything hurt, but in a distant, manageable way. No, just tired. That's normal. The chelation therapy is working, but your body needs time to recover. Dr. Reeves checked the IV line, made notes on a tablet. You're going to feel exhausted for the next few days. Possible nausea, headaches, muscle aches, but you'll live. The last part was delivered with the kind of certainty that told me it had been uncertain earlier. How close was it? I asked. Dr. Reeves glanced over her shoulder at someone I couldn't quite see. Close enough that Mr. Valente's decision to bring you here instead of waiting for an ambulance saved your life. Dominic Valente stepped into my field of vision. He'd removed his suit jacket, his white shirt sleeves rolled up to his elbows. He looked tired, actual. Genuine exhaustion visible in the slight shadows under his eyes. The tension in his jaw. You have questions, he said. Not asking, stating. A few thousand. I tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. The room spun sickeningly. Stay down. Dr. Reeves pressed a hand gently to my ballad. Shoulder. You're not ready to move yet. Where am I? Private medical facility, Valente answered. One of mine. Completely secure, fully staffed, discreet. Translation, off the books. No official records, no questions asked. The kind of place a man like him would need. James? I asked, suddenly remembering my photographer. My friend who was with me? Safe, unharmed. Currently giving a statement to the police about your allergic reaction at the restaurant. Valente's expression was unreadable. He doesn't know you're here. No one does except the people in this room, and two of my most trusted men. The police have been told you were taken to Mount Sinai and are being treated for a severe allergic reaction to shellfish. He moved closer, pulling up a chair beside the bed. The restaurant is closed pending health inspection. Marco, your server, has been arrested for attempting to flee the scene. My mind, still foggy from the poison and medication, struggled to process. This. Marco poisoned me? Marco administered the poison. Whether he did so on orders or his own initiative is what we're determining now. Valente leaned back, the chair creaking softly. But you already knew you were in danger, didn't you? Before the food arrived. It wasn't a question. Of course it wasn't. The text message, I said. Someone warned me off. From a burner phone, purchased with cash at a bodega 3 blocks from Osteria Nota, then destroyed immediately after. Valente's dark eyes held mine. Someone wanted to scare you away. When that didn't work, they escalated to murder. In your restaurant. Yes. The single word carried lethal weight. In my restaurant. Dr. Reeves cleared her throat. I'll give you two some privacy. Miss Santos, press the call button if you need anything. I'll be back in an hour to check your vitals. She gathered her tablet and departed, closing the door softly behind her. The silence that followed was oppressive. Dominic Valente sat in his chair, perfectly still, watching me with the intensity of a predator assessing prey, or perhaps assessing a potential asset. You're Maya Santos, he said finally. Senior food critic for Palette magazine. Columbia School of Journalism, graduated summa cum laude. Spent 2 years at the Times before moving to the magazine circuit. Known for thorough, occasionally brutal reviews. Also known for an unusual interest in restaurant business practices, financial structures, supply chain management. He paused, letting that sink in. Your sister, Elena Santos, died 7 years ago from scombroid poisoning at Marino's Seafood Grill. The restaurant had 15 health code violations, all overlooked due to the owner's connections to the Castellano family. By the time anyone acted, 3 people were dead. My chest tightened. Hearing Elena's death reduced to facts, to a case summary, hurt more than I expected. Since then, Valente continued, his voice softer now, you've exposed 6 restaurants for health violations, 3 for labor law violations, and brought down 2 entire restaurant groups through your investigative work, always carefully documented, always legally airtight, always devastating. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. And for the past 3 months, you've been investigating me. There was no point denying it. Yes. Money laundering through your restaurant group. Using food costs to justify cash flow, creating paper trails through your supply chain, laundering approximately $40 million annually across your 16 locations. A muscle ticked in his jaw. 42 million. You were close. The casual admission stunned me. You're just going to admit it? You're not recording this. Your phone was left at the restaurant. You have no proof of this conversation. His eyes glinted in the dim light. And more importantly, Maya Santos, you're only alive right now because I chose to save you. That creates certain obligations. I didn't ask you to save me. No, you asked me to help you. There's a difference. He stood, pacing to the window. Outside, I could see city lights. We were high up, probably another penthouse. When you slid that napkin to me, you made a choice. You could have trusted the system called 9 centimes, waited for an ambulance, let the authorities handle your attempted murder. But you didn't. They wouldn't have arrived in time. Exactly. He turned back to face me. You knew the system would fail you, so you turned to me instead. The criminal you've been investigating for months. You trusted me to save your life. I didn't have a choice. Everyone has choices, Miss Santos. You chose the devil you were investigating over the angels who would have let you die. He returned to the chair, sitting with casual grace. Now we need to discuss what happens next. My head was pounding. My body felt like it had been hit by a truck, and I was having this conversation with a mob boss while hooked up to an IV. This was not how I'd imagined my evening ending. What do you want? I asked. The same thing you do. To find out who tried to kill you in my restaurant. Why do you care? I was investigating you. I have evidence that could send you to prison. Had evidence, he corrected gently. Your laptop was at your apartment. Was being the operative word. My people collected it approximately 2 hours ago, along with your backup drives, your files, your notes, everything you'd compiled on my operations. Cold fury flooded through me, momentarily overwhelming the exhaustion. You had my apartment robbed? I had your evidence secured before the actual police started wondering why a food critic had financial records on restaurant operations. He held up a hand before I could explode. Nothing else was touched. No personal items, no valuables, just the investigation materials, which, incidentally, was impressively thorough. You would have made an excellent forensic accountant. Give it back. No. The flat refusal hit like a slap. That's 3 months of work. That's 3 months of ammunition against me. Yes, which is precisely why I can't give it back. Valente leaned forward again. But I'm not destroying it either. Consider it insurance. For both of us. Insurance against what? Against you deciding to finish your investigation and publish. And against me deciding that you're more of a liability than an asset. His expression was unreadable. Mutually assured destruction, if you will. Very civilized. There was nothing civilized about this. So what, I just forget everything I found? Pretend your operation doesn't exist? No, I'm proposing something more interesting. He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a few times, then turned it to face me. On the screen was a photo of Marco, my server from Osteria Note, except he looked different younger, his hair styled differently. He was standing next to another man, someone who looked vaguely familiar. Marco Benedetti, Valente said, worked at Osteria Note for 6 weeks. Before that, he worked at 3 other restaurants in my group, never staying longer than 2 months. Always good reviews, always professional, never a problem. He swiped to another photo. This one showed Marco meeting with someone in what looked like a parking garage. The other person's face was partially obscured, but their body language suggested an argument. 2 days ago, Marco met with this person. We don't have a clear image of their face, but we know they gave him something likely the arsenic used to poison you. Valente swiped again. Marco has a sister with stage 4 cancer. Medical bills over $300,000. He's been desperate for money. Someone paid him to kill me. Yes. The question is who, and more importantly, why? Valente pocketed his phone. Marco isn't talking. Yet. But he will. They always do eventually. The casual way, he said, it made my skin crawl. I'm going to torture him. I'm going to have a very persuasive conversation with him. There's a difference. He studied me. Does that bother you? The idea that I might hurt the man who tried to kill you? It should. It absolutely should. But all I could think about was the metallic taste in my mouth, the sensation of my body betraying me, the certainty that I was going to die. I don't know, I admitted. Something like approval flickered in his eyes. Honest. Good. We're going to need honesty for this to work. For what to work? Our arrangement. He stood, moving to a side table where a water pitcher and glasses waited. He poured water, brought it to me. You want to know who tried to kill you and why? I want to know who in my organization is compromised enough to attempt murder in one of my restaurants. We both want answers. I took the water with shaking hands, sipped carefully. My throat was raw. So we work together. You help me find the traitor in my organization. I keep you alive long enough to figure out who wants you dead and why. He returned to his chair. You're an investigator, Miss Santos. One of the best I've seen, actually. Your work on my operation was meticulous. Imagine what you could find if you were looking from the inside instead of the outside. You want me to investigate your own organization. I want you to help me root out whoever is making moves against me. Because make no mistake, poisoning you wasn't just about silencing your investigation. That could have been done much more quietly. His expression hardened. This was a message. Someone wanted to create chaos, draw attention, possibly trigger a federal investigation. Someone wanted to hurt me by turning my own restaurant into a crime scene. I processed this, my exhausted brain struggling to keep up. The Castellanos. They're your rivals, right? They had my sister killed through negligence. The Castellanos have been absorbed into my organization for the past 2 years. Their territory, their operations, everything. That's ancient history. He waved dismissively. This is someone else. Someone who knows my operations intimately enough to get to one of my servers, to know you'd be at Osteria Not tonight, to plan this precisely. How did they know I'd be there? I only made the reservation yesterday. That, Valente said quietly, is an excellent question. One that suggests the leak is close. Very close. The implications were staggering. Someone in Valente's inner circle was making moves against him, and they'd tried to use my investigation, my presence, possibly my death as a weapon. I don't work for criminals, I said. But the words lacked conviction even to my own ears. You don't work for me. You work with me, temporarily, until we both have what we need. He stood, preparing to leave. Think about it. You're safe here for now, but you can't hide forever. Your editor will wonder where you are. Your photographer friend is already asking. Questions. The police will want to interview you about your allergic reaction, and whoever tried to kill you will try again, especially now that they know you survived. He moved to the door, then paused. Or, he said softly, you could go back to your normal life, publish some restaurant reviews, pretend this never happened. I'll have your investigation materials destroyed, we'll call it even, and you'll never hear from me again. And the person who tried to kill me will remain free, possibly to try again, possibly to move on to easier targets. His dark eyes held mine. Your choice, Miss Santos. Safety in ignorance, or answers in alliance with the devil. He left before I could respond, the door closing with a soft click. I lay in the hospital bed, the private, off the books, criminal hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing despite my body's exhaustion. 3 months of investigation, gone. My evidence, confiscated. My life, saved by the very man I'd been trying to bring down. And now he was offering me a choice that wasn't really a choice at all. Because he was right. Whoever had poisoned me would try again. And the police, the system, the official channels, they'd failed to protect Elena, and they'd failed to protect me. I'd known that the moment I felt the poison taking hold, when I'd made the split-second decision to trust Dominic Valente instead of waiting for an ambulance. I'd already chosen the devil. The question now was whether I'd made a deal with him or just postponed my own execution. My phone, a new one, I realized, sitting on the side table, buzzed. I reached for it with trembling hands. One message, from an unknown number. Rest. Decide in the morning. But decide quickly, Maya. Your would-be killer won't wait forever. No signature. Didn't need one. I set the phone down and closed my eyes. Elena's face swimming in my memory. 23 years old, laughing over dinner the night before she died, telling me about her new job, her new boyfriend, her new life that would never be. I'm sorry, I whispered to her ghost. I'm sorry I couldn't stop them before, but I can stop this. I can find out who's behind it, even if it meant working with a criminal, even if it meant becoming complicit in his world, even if it meant crossing lines I'd sworn I'd never cross, because the alternative, going back to my apartment, to my reviews, to pretending I didn't know what I knew that would mean, accepting that some people could poison critics in restaurants and get away with it, that justice was only for those who could afford it or had the right connections. I'd spent 7 years fighting that reality. I wasn't going to stop now. When Dr. Reeves returned an hour later for her checkup, she found me sitting up in bed despite the exhaustion, despite the lingering effects of the poison, despite every instinct screaming at me to run. I need to speak to Valente, I told her. She raised an eyebrow. It's 3 a.m. Miss Santos, you should be resting. I've made my decision. He'll want to hear it. Something shifted in her expression, respect. Perhaps, or maybe just resignation. She'd probably seen this pattern before. People who fell into Dominic Valente's orbit, who made deals they told themselves were temporary, who convinced themselves they could work with the devil and walk away clean. I'll let him know, she said quietly. 20 minutes later, Valente returned. He'd changed clothes, dark slacks, and a charcoal sweater now, his hair slightly damp as if he'd showered. But his eyes were alert, sharp, missing nothing. You've decided. Not a question. I have conditions. His lips curved slightly. Of course you do. I help you find your traitor. You keep me alive and help me find out who wanted me dead. But I held up a hand as he started to speak. When this is over, when we both have our answers, you return my investigation materials. All of it. And I get to decide what to do with what I learned. Absolutely not. The refusal was instant, flat. Those files stay with me as insurance. Then we don't have a deal. We stared at each other, wills clashing in the quiet room. The monitors beeped softly, marking my elevated heart rate. You don't trust me, Valente said finally. Would you, in my position? A pause. Then, surprisingly, a real smile, brief, but genuine. No, I wouldn't. He considered for a moment. Modified proposal. Your files remain secure but intact. When this is finished, we both decide together what happens to them. If you can convince me that publishing won't start a war that gets people killed, I'll consider it. That's not the best you're going to get, he interrupted firmly. I'm not handing you a loaded gun to use against me, Maya. But I'm also not destroying evidence of genuine crimes. This way, we're both invested in finding a solution that doesn't end in mutual destruction. It wasn't what I wanted. It wasn't enough. But it was. More than I'd expected. Fine, but I have more conditions. I'm listening. No killing. Not Marco. Not whoever is behind this. We do this legally, or as legally as possible. Justice. Not revenge. His expression hardened. Someone tried to kill you in my restaurant. Do you understand what that means in my world? It's not just an attack on you. It's a challenge to my authority. If I don't respond with appropriate force, then find another way to respond. I won't have blood on my hands. My voice was steel despite my exhaustion. This is non-negotiable. We do this my way, or I walk out of here right now and take my chances with whoever wants me dead. You wouldn't make it to the elevator. Then you'd have to explain to your people why you're holding a famous food critic prisoner. That would generate exactly the kind of attention you're trying to avoid. Stalemate. Valente's jaw clenched. For a long moment, I thought he'd refuse, thought he'd throw me out or worse. Then, slowly, he nodded. No unnecessary deaths. But if someone tries to kill you again, or me, all bets are off. I won't sacrifice our lives for your principles. Fair enough. Anything else? Yes. I want regular contact with James, my photographer, and my editor. I can't just disappear without people asking questions. Already arranged. James thinks you're recovering at a friend's apartment from the allergic reaction. Your editor has been told you're taking a few days of sick leave. That buys us a week, maybe 2 before people start digging. Of course he'd already thought of that. And after 2 weeks? After 2 weeks, either this is resolved or you come up with a believable story. You're a journalist, Miss Santos. I'm sure you can craft something plausible. He moved to the door again, then stopped. We start tomorrow. Tonight, you rest. Dr. Reeves will monitor you. In the morning, we'll begin figuring out who wanted you dead and why. He glanced back. And Maya? Welcome to my world. Try not to drown in it. The door closed behind him with finality. I sank back against the pillows, exhaustion finally overwhelming adrenaline. I'd just made a deal with Dominic Valente. The man I'd been trying to expose was now my... What? Ally? Partner? Co-conspirator? Whatever label fit, I'd crossed a line tonight. From observer to participant, from investigator to insider. Elena's face floated in my mind again. Would she approve? Would she understand that sometimes justice required compromise, required working with people who operated outside the law because the law had failed? I didn't know, but I knew I couldn't let whoever poisoned me get away with it. Couldn't let them try again with someone else, some other journalist asking the wrong questions about the wrong people. And maybe, just maybe, I could find out the truth about Dominic Valente's empire while I was at it. From the inside, I might see things my months of external investigation had missed, might find evidence even, better than what he'd confiscated. Or I might become exactly what I'd always feared. Another person compromised by proximity to power. Another idealist corrupted by necessity. Another cautionary tale about the cost of pursuing justice in a broken system. What have I done? I whispered to the empty room. No one answered. Outside the window, the city lights glittered like fallen stars, beautiful and cold and indifferent to the choices being made in darkened rooms by desperate people. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep, knowing that when I woke, everything would be different. I'd asked to be saved. Now I'd learn the price. Morning arrived with Dr. Reeves checking my vitals and declaring me well enough to move around, though she insisted I take it slow. The arsenic was clearing from my system, but my body was still recovering from what she cheerfully called a near-death experience. You're lucky Mr. Valente acted so quickly, she said, removing the IV line with practiced efficiency. Most people don't survive arsenic poisoning administered the way yours was. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing enough to kill, but slow enough to look like a natural medical emergency. Professional, I murmured, flexing my hand where the IV had been. Very. Dr. Reeves handed me a bottle of pills. Chelation supplements. Take one twice daily for the next 2 weeks. You'll still feel tired, possibly nauseous. Drink plenty of water, eat light meals, no alcohol. When can I leave? She gave me a look that suggested she'd heard that question many times before. Mr. Valente will discuss that with you. But medically, you're stable enough to be discharged. Whether you should be is another question entirely. There was warning in her tone. She knew what I'd agreed to last night. Knew I was walking deeper into Valente's world instead of running from it. "How long have you worked for him?" I asked. 8 years. She disposed of the medical waste, her movements efficient, and practiced. Before that, I was an ER surgeon at Mount Sinai. Got tired of watching people die because they couldn't afford treatment, tired of the bureaucracy, tired of doing everything right, and still losing patients to a broken system. "So you started working for the mob instead?" Her lips twitched. "I started working for someone who pays me extremely well to save lives without asking questions about insurance coverage or immigration status. The people I treat here, most of them would be turned away from legitimate hospitals or arrested the moment they walked through the door. That doesn't make it right." "No," she agreed quietly, "but it makes it necessary. You'll learn that distinction quickly if you stay in Mr. Valente's orbit. He exists in the spaces where right and necessary don't always overlap." She left me with that thought and a fresh set of clothes designer jeans, a soft cashmere sweater, undergarments still in packaging, all in my exact size. I tried not to think about how Valente had known my measurements. I showered in the attached bathroom, washing away the hospital smell and the lingering sense of violation. The hot water felt like absolution, though I knew it would take more than soap to feel clean after what I'd agreed to. When I emerged, dressed in clothes that fit too perfectly, I found a breakfast tray waiting. Coffee, good coffee. The kind I usually couldn't afford: fresh fruit, toast, scrambled eggs. My stomach rebelled at the sight of food, but I forced myself to eat. I'd need my strength for whatever came next. I was finishing my coffee when a knock sounded at the door. "Come in," I called, expecting Dr. Reeves or perhaps Valente himself. Instead, a woman entered, late 20s, dark hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail, wearing tailored black pants and a burgundy blouse. She moved with the controlled grace of someone trained in combat, and I noticed the slight bulge at her hip that suggested a concealed weapon. "Miss Santos, I'm Lucia Andretti, Mr. Valente's chief of security." Her voice was professional, clipped. "I'll be overseeing your protection detail while you're working with us." "Protection detail," I repeated. "That sounds ominous. Someone tried to kill you 2 days ago." "Last night," I corrected. "It was last night." Lucia's expression didn't change. "It's Thursday morning, Miss Santos. You were unconscious for over 30 hours. The arsenic dose was higher than we initially thought. Doctor Reeves had to administer multiple rounds of chelation therapy." The room tilted slightly. 30 hours. I'd lost more than a day. "My phone I need to call. Already handled." Lucia pulled out a smartphone from her pocket, handed it to me. "Your photographer friend James has been texted from your number, saying you're recovering well and will be back to work next week. Your editor received an email explaining you had a severe reaction to shellfish and need time to recover. Your landlord was told you're staying with a friend." I stared at the phone. My phone, but clearly they'd had complete access to it, had read my messages, my emails, probably gone through every contact and conversation. "You went through my private communications. Mr. Valente's orders. We needed to ensure your cover story was maintained, and that no one was looking for you." Lucia's tone suggested she saw nothing wrong with this invasion of privacy. "We also needed to verify you hadn't shared your investigation findings with anyone else." "And did I?" The question came out sharper than intended. "No, which is interesting. 3 months of investigation and you kept everything to yourself. Not even your editor knew the full scope of what you'd found." Lucia studied me with new interest. Most journalists would have shared that information, created a backup in case something happened to them. I had shared it. With Elena's ghost, in late-night conversations at her grave, with the memory of my sister's death, the promise I'd made to expose the systems that had killed her. But those weren't the kind of backups Lucia was looking for. "I was waiting until I had everything airtight," I said. "One chance to publish, one shot to make it matter. I couldn't risk anyone knowing before then." "Paranoid. Careful," I corrected, and apparently justified, given someone tried to poison me. Lucia's lips curved in something that might have been approval. "Mr. Valente is waiting for you. If you're ready?" I wasn't, but I stood anyway, following her out of the medical room and into a hallway that screamed expensive taste. Hardwood floors, original artwork, lighting that was somehow both ambient and precisely directed. We passed several closed doors before reaching an elevator. "Where are we?" I asked as we stepped inside. "Mr. Valente's private residence, penthouse level." Lucia pressed a button for the floor below. He maintains this floor for medical purposes and guest accommodations. He lives one. Floor down. The elevator descended smoothly. When the doors opened, I stepped into a space that took my breath away. The entire floor was open concept. Floor-to-ceiling windows, offering panoramic views of the city. The design was modern but warm. Dark wood, leather furniture, subtle lighting that made the whole space feel both expansive and intimate. A kitchen that would make any chef weep with envy. A dining area with a table that could seat 12. And beyond that, a living space arranged around a fireplace that was currently burning despite the mild weather outside. Dominic Valente stood by those windows, his back to us, phone pressed to his ear. He wore dark slacks and a white dress shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. Even in casual clothes, he radiated authority. "I don't care what it costs," he was saying, his voice hard. "Find out where he got the arsenic. Someone supplied it. Someone with access to that specific compound. Check every contact, every transaction, every conversation Marco had in the past 2 months." He listened for a moment, then, "No, keep him alive. For now. We may still need him." So Marco was still breathing. That was something, at least. Valente ended the call and turned, his dark eyes immediately finding mine. His expression was unreadable as he took in my appearance, his clothes on my body, the lingering pallor in my cheeks, the way I stood slightly hunched as if still protecting my poisoned stomach. "You look better," he said, which was probably a lie. "Coffee? I already had some." "Then sit. We have a great deal to discuss." He moved to the dining table, gestured to a chair. Lucia took up position near the entrance, far enough for privacy but close enough to intervene if needed. I sat, acutely aware of Valente settling into the chair adjacent to mine rather than across. Close enough that I could smell his cologne, something woody and expensive. The same scent I'd caught when he'd held me at the restaurant. "Marco is talking," Valente said without preamble. "Not willingly, but he's talking. He claims he was approached 3 weeks ago by someone who knew about his sister's medical bills. They offered him $50,000 to poison a food critic who would be dining at Osteria Note. Did he know it was me specifically? Yes. They showed him your photo, told him you'd be there Tuesday night with a male companion. They provided the arsenic pharmaceutical grade, the kind used in certain cancer treatments, ironically enough, and detailed instructions on how to administer it in the crudo course. My stomach churned. This had been planned, meticulously. Who approached him? He doesn't know. They met twice, both times in public places, once at a coffee shop, once at a park. Different person each time, or at least different appearances. Professional disguises, probably. They communicated through burner phones, paid in cash. Very careful, very clean. But not careful enough, or you wouldn't be, telling me this. Valente's lips curved slightly. Marco may not know who hired him, but he kept one of the burner phones. Sentimental value, apparently it was his first time committing attempted murder, and he wanted a souvenir. That's disturbingly stupid. Criminals often are. Despite what movies suggest. Valente pulled out his own phone, tapped the screen, then slid it across the table to me. My people are analyzing the phone now, but we already found something interesting in the call logs. I looked at the screen. It showed a list of numbers, most of them appearing only once or twice, but one number appeared repeatedly dozens of calls over a 3-week period. "That number," Valente said, leaning closer and pointing, "belongs to a phone registered to a shell company. That shell company is owned by another shell company, which is owned by a trust, which is managed by a law firm in the Cayman Islands." "Money laundering," I said immediately. "Multi-layered corporate. Structure designed to hide the ultimate beneficial owner." "Exactly. The kind of structure I use for some of my operations." His dark eyes held mine. "And the kind of structure used by only a handful of other organizations in this city." "Your investigation taught you to recognize these patterns, didn't it?" I nodded slowly. I'd spent months learning to trace money through corporate structures, to identify the patterns that suggested criminal enterprises hiding behind legitimate businesses. "How many organizations in the city use this specific pattern?" I asked. 4, including mine. Valente's expression was grim. The Volkov organization, the Chen family, the Russo crew, and me. "So one of your rivals tried to kill me." "Possibly. Or someone wants it to look like one of my rivals tried to kill you." He took his phone back. "That's what I need your help figuring out. You're an investigator, Maya. You know how to trace financial patterns, how to connect seemingly unrelated pieces of information. I need you to do that now, from the inside. You want me to investigate your rivals. I want you to investigate everyone. My rivals, my allies, my own organization. His voice dropped lower. Because whoever did this had inside information. They knew you'd be at Osteria not that specific night. You only made the reservation 24 hours in advance through the magazine's general number. So, either someone at my magazine leaked the information, I finished, or someone in your organization was watching the reservation system specifically for my name. Both possibilities are disturbing. One suggests your investigation was compromised from the beginning. The other suggests I have a traitor at the operational level, someone with access to restaurant systems. I processed this, my mind already working through the implications. If it's my magazine, then this is about silencing my investigation specifically. If it's your organization, then it's about hurting you through me. Yes, and we need to know which. Valente stood, paced to the windows. My people are thorough, but they think like criminals. They look for the obvious angles: financial motivation, power plays, territorial disputes. You think like an investigator. You look for patterns, anomalies, things that don't fit. You're assuming I know how your world works well enough to spot those anomalies. You've been investigating me for 3 months. You understand my operation better than most of my own people. He turned back to face me. And now I'm going to give you complete access to everything you wanted. Financial records, organizational structure, operational details, everything. The offer was staggering. Why would you do that? Because someone is making a move against me, and I can't afford to be blind right now. Because you're already too deep in this to back out if I'm compromised. You're a loose end that will need to be eliminated. And because... He paused, something flickering in his dark eyes. Because I think you might actually help me become better at what I do. Better at crime? Better at distinguishing between necessary crimes and unnecessary ones. He moved back to the table, sat down again. You asked last night that we do this legally, or as legally as possible. That intrigued me. Most people in your position would just want revenge, wouldn't care about the methods, but you care about justice, not vengeance. That's unusual. My sister died because people cut corners and broke rules. I said quietly, I won't become like them just to catch them. Valente studied me for a long moment. Your sister would be proud of you, for maintaining your principles, even in impossible situations. The unexpected kindness hit harder than any threat could have. I looked away, blinking back sudden moisture in my eyes. So what's the plan? I asked, my voice rougher than intended. You spend today reviewing everything we have Marco's. Interrogation, the burner phone analysis, the timeline of events. Tomorrow, we start visiting my operations, restaurants, supply warehouse, the businesses I use for laundering. You'll see how everything works, meet the key players, ask questions. And you think one of them will just reveal themselves as the traitor? No, but you'll notice things. Patterns, reactions, details that seem wrong. That's what you do, isn't it? Notice what others miss. He pulled a tablet from somewhere, slid it across to me. Start with this. Complete financial records for all 16 restaurants, going back 2 years. My people have highlighted the areas they think are suspicious. Tell me if they missed anything. I picked up the tablet, turned it on. The screen immediately filled with spreadsheets, dense columns of numbers that made my investigative journalist heart sing. One condition, I said, not looking up from the screen. Another one? I work alone. No one looking over my shoulder. No one. Monitoring what I'm reviewing or what conclusions I'm drawing. You want my expertise? Then let me work the way I work. Valente was quiet for a moment. Then, agreed. But Lucia stays on as your protection detail. Someone already tried to kill you once. Fine, but she stays outside whatever room I'm working in. Acceptable. He stood, preparing to leave. There's a study down the hall. Second door on the left. It has everything you'll need: computer, printer, more coffee than any reasonable person should consume. Lucia will show you. He started to walk away, then paused. Maya? His voice was softer than I'd heard it. Thank you for trusting me enough to do this. I don't trust you, I corrected, finally looking up from the tablet. I'm just betting that your self-interest aligns with mine right now. The moment that changes, you'll walk away. I know. Something that might have been respect flickered across his face. That's why this might actually work. He left, Lucia, following at a discreet distance. I was alone in his penthouse, surrounded by luxury paid for with laundered money, holding evidence of crimes I'd spent months trying to document. And instead of exposing him, I was about to help him. Elena, I whispered to my sister's memory, I really hope I know what I'm doing. The tablet screen glowed with numbers that told stories of money moving through restaurants like water through pipes, flowing, dividing, disappearing into structures designed to hide its origin. I took a deep breath and started reading. Somewhere in these numbers was a pattern that didn't fit, a transaction that would lead me to whoever wanted me dead. I just had to find it before they tried again. The study was exactly what I needed: quiet, organized, and stocked with enough office supplies to outfit a small corporation. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined 2 walls, filled with leather-bound volumes that were probably first editions. A massive desk dominated the space, positioned to face windows that offered yet another stunning view of the city. I ignored the view and focused on the work. For the next 6 hours, I lost myself in financial records. It was like reading a novel written in numbers. Each transaction a sentence, each month a chapter, each restaurant its own subplot in the larger narrative of Dominic Valente's empire. And what an empire it was. 16 restaurants, ranging from casual trattorias to Michelin-starred fine dining. Annual revenue of approximately $4 million across all locations. Food costs that seemed reasonable at first glance, roughly 32% of revenue. Industry standard for high-end establishments. But when I dug deeper, patterns emerged. 3 restaurants, Osteria Not, Bella Vista, and Cucina Moderna, showed food cost percentages closer to 45%. That was high. Unusually high for establishments with their price points. Either they were incredibly inefficient, or they were intentionally inflating costs to justify additional cash flow. I made notes, cross-referenced with supply chain documentation. The 3 restaurants with inflated costs all used the same primary supplier, Adriatic Import Group. I searched for Adriatic in Valente's corporate structure. There, a subsidiary wholly owned by the Valente Hospitality Group. So, Valente owned both the restaurants and their supplier. Money flowing from one entity to another, creating paper trails that justified large cash transactions. Classic laundering structure. But something was off. I pulled up 2 years of invoices from Adriatic to the 3 restaurants. The quantities made sense: appropriate amounts of seafood, produce, meat for establishments of their size. The prices were premium, but not absurdly so. So where was the laundering happening? I leaned back in the leather desk chair, rubbing my temples. Think, Maya. Follow the money. Adriatic Import Group purchased goods from international suppliers, Italian companies primarily. But also Spanish, Greek, Portuguese. Those invoices were in the files too, translated into English but showing original currency amounts. There, the exchange rates were wrong, subtle, not enough to trigger automated fraud detection, but definitely wrong. Adriatic was claiming to pay more euros per dollar than the actual exchange rate on those dates. The difference was small, a few percentage points, but across hundreds of transactions in 2 years, it added up to millions. That money was disappearing into the gap between claimed exchange rates and actual rates, probably into offshore accounts, to be cleaned and returned through other channels. It was brilliant. Most investigators would stop at the restaurants, see the inflated food costs, and assume that's where the laundering happened. But the real magic was one step further back. Hidden in currency conversion. I kept digging, lost in the puzzle. This was what I loved about investigative work: the moment when patterns revealed themselves, when chaos resolved into clarity. A knock at the door pulled me from the numbers. Yes? Lucia opened the door, carrying a tray. Mr. Valente thought you might need lunch. You've been in here for 6 hours without a break. Had it been 6 hours? I glanced at the window, surprised to see afternoon sunlight slanting through. Time had disappeared while I worked. Thank you, I said as she set the tray on a side table. Grilled chicken, salad, fresh bread, sparkling water. Where's Valente? Meetings. He owns legitimate businesses too, you know. Requires his attention. Lucia paused at the door. He asked if you'd found anything interesting yet. I looked at my notes, at the currency exchange discrepancies I'd discovered, information that could be evidence in a federal case that could help convict Valente of money laundering, information I was now supposed to share with him. Tell him I'm making progress, I said carefully. I'll have a full report by this evening. Lucia nodded and left. I stared at the closed door, at the lunch that was probably perfectly prepared, at the tablet full of evidence. What was I doing? I'd crossed from investigator to, what? Consultant? Accomplice? No. I was finding who tried to kill me. That was the priority. Everything else was just complications I'd deal with later. I forced myself to eat Dr. Reeves's warnings about nutrition still fresh, then returned to the numbers. By the time evening arrived, I'd mapped out Valente's entire operation. Not just the laundering structure, but the legitimate businesses too. He owned 3 companies outright: the Valente Hospitality Group, the restaurants, Adriatic Import Group, Food Supply, and Valente Properties Real Estate, including the building we were currently in. The restaurants were profitable on their own, legitimately. Good food, good locations, strong management. Valente wasn't just using them as fronts, he was actually running successful businesses. That complicated things. The criminals Elena had died to weren't running good restaurants. They were cutting corners, bribing inspectors, prioritizing profit over safety. Valente was doing the opposite, running quality operations while simultaneously using them to launder money. Was that better? Worse? The same? I didn't know anymore. A different knock at the door, heavier than Lucia's. Come in. Dominic Valente entered, now wearing dark jeans and a black sweater. He'd showered recently, his hair was slightly damp, and he smelled of that same expensive cologne. Lucia said you've been working all day, he said, moving to lean against the desk near where I sat. Find anything? I turned the tablet toward him, showed him my notes on the currency exchange discrepancies. His eyebrows rose. You found that in 6 hours? It's what I do. I pulled the tablet back. Your people who reviewed these records, they missed it because they were looking at the restaurant level. But the real structure is upstream, in the import company. Impressive. He studied me with new intensity. My accountants didn't catch that, and they've been managing these books for 2 years. Your accountants were probably told what to look for. I wasn't. I hesitated, then asked the question burning in my mind. Why do you do it? The restaurants are profitable on their own. You don't need to launder money through them. So why risk it? Valente was quiet for a long moment. Then he moved to the window, hands in his pockets, silhouetted against the fading light. Because legitimate businesses don't generate the kind of money I need for other operations. Operations that can't be official, can't show up on any books, but are necessary. He glanced back at me. Do you know what I did before I inherited my father's organization? No. I was studying architecture. Columbia University, junior year, when my father was killed. His voice was matter of fact, but I heard the edge underneath. I was supposed to design buildings, create things that would last generations. Instead, I inherited an empire built on violence and exploitation. You could have walked away. No, I couldn't. The people who killed my father would have killed me too if I'd shown weakness. The rival organizations would have carved up our territory, started wars that would have killed hundreds. He turned fully to face me. So I took over. Consolidated power. Made the hard choices. Including money laundering to fund operations that keep those wars from happening. To pay for doctors like Dr. Reeves who treat people who can't go to hospitals. To maintain territories through economic control rather than violence. He moved closer. I'm not a good man, Maya, but I'm better than the alternatives. That has to be enough. Does it? I asked quietly. It has to be, because the alternative is chaos. He pulled up a chair, sat across from me. But you didn't spend 6 hours reviewing my finances just to understand my moral justifications. You found something else. Perceptive. Yes. 3 anomalies in the past 2 months. I pulled up my notes on the tablet. First, Osteria Note received a shipment from Adriatic Import Group 3 weeks ago. The invoice shows premium seafood, including the diver scallops that were used in my poisoned crudo. But the timing is wrong. Wrong how? Diver scallops are seasonal. Peak season is November through April. We're in late September. They shouldn't be available at all, and certainly not at the prices listed on this invoice. Valente leaned forward, studying the screen. So either the invoice is falsified, or someone substituted different scallops and pocketed the price difference. I finished. Either way, It suggests someone at Adriatic or Osteria Note is running a side operation. What's the second anomaly? Bella Vista's food costs jumped 15% in August, stayed elevated through September. But their menu prices didn't change, and they're elevated few to find. Customer count actually dropped slightly. They should be losing money, but somehow they're still showing profit. Someone's cooking the books. Yes, and not just for laundering, this is sloppy. Obvious if anyone looks carefully, which suggests either incompetence or desperation. Valente's expression darkened, or someone wanting the discrepancies to be found. What's the third? I hesitated because this one was bigger. Adriatic Import Group made a payment 2 months ago to a company called Meridian Consulting. $1 million, listed as Business Development Services. I don't recognize that name. You wouldn't. It doesn't exist. I pulled up my research. Meridian Consulting was registered in Delaware 6 months ago, has no physical address, no employees, no website. It's a shell company designed for a single purpose to receive that one payment. And then the money disappeared. I can't trace where it went after Meridian received it, which means someone very good at hiding money set this up. I met his eyes. Someone with experience in financial structures. Someone who learned from watching your operation. The implications hung in the air between us. Someone inside my organization, Valente said softly, has been embezzling, using my own laundering structures against me. Yes, and that same someone probably needed cash urgently enough to get sloppy with the Bella Vista books. I pulled up a timeline I'd created. The payment to Meridian happened July 15th. The Bella Vista discrepancies started August 1st. Marco's sister was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer July 20th, and he was approached about poisoning me approximately August 26th. You think they're connected? I think someone stole $1 million from you, got nervous when the Bella Vista anomalies started attracting attention, and decided to create a bigger problem to distract from the first one. I showed him my notes. Poisoning a food critic in one of your restaurants guarantees federal investigation, media attention, health inspections across all your properties. While everyone is focused on the attempted murder and possible health violations, financial irregularities that might be noticed get buried in the chaos. Valente stood abruptly, paced to the window and back. Who has access to authorize payments from Adriatic? According to your corporate structure? You, your CFO Marco Santoro, and the operations manager at Adriatic, someone named, I checked my notes, Angela Chen. Angela's worked for me for 8 years. She's family, not blood, but close enough. Marco Santoro has been my CFO for 12 years, since before my father died. He shook his head. I trust both of them completely. Then one of them is betraying that trust. I stood, moved to where he was pacing. Or there's a fourth option, someone with unauthorized access to your systems, a sophisticated hacker, or someone who stole credentials. My IT security is military grade. So was the Democratic National Committee's. People still got in. I pulled up another file. Your CFO uses the same password for multiple systems. I can see it in the login pattern, slight timing differences that suggest copy-paste from a password manager. If someone got access to his manager, they'd have everything. Valente's jaw clenched. I need to talk to Marco. Tonight. Wait. I caught his arm without thinking, then immediately released it, startled by the heat of his skin through the sweater. If we confront him directly, whoever is behind this will know we're close. They'll either destroy evidence or disappear. Then what do you suggest? I thought fast, mind racing through possibilities. We need more information. The burner phone Marco the waiter kept, has your team finished analyzing it? Yes. The number I showed you this morning was the primary contact, but there were also encrypted messages. My people are working on breaking the encryption. Let me see the rounda. Phone. And the messages, encrypted or not. He studied me. Why? Because I might recognize patterns your people don't. I've been studying criminal communication for years, how people hide information, what mistakes they make. I met his eyes. Trust me. Or don't, but give me a chance to prove I'm worth the risk you're taking. A long moment passed. Then Valente pulled out his phone, sent a quick text. Lucia will bring you everything within the hour. But Maya, he stepped closer, and I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. If you're playing me, if this is an elaborate scheme to gather evidence against me, you should know that I'll find out. And consequences will be severe. I'm not playing you. My voice was steady despite my racing heart. I want whoever tried to kill me. Everything else is just complications we'll deal with when we get there. When we get there, he repeated softly. Not if. You're assuming we'll both survive this. I'm assuming we're both too, stubborn to die easily. His lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. Fair assessment. He left, and I returned to the desk, mind already working through next steps. The burner phone would have metadata, timing of calls and messages, cell tower information that might indicate locations. Even encrypted messages had patterns: length, frequency, time of day. Lucia arrived 20 minutes later with a sealed evidence bag containing the phone and a thick folder of printouts. Mr. Valente said to tell you that Marco Santoro, the CFO, will be at the Bella Vista location tomorrow morning, conducting a routine financial audit, she said. He suggested you might want to observe. Observe from where? Bella Vista has a private dining room on the second floor. It overlooks the main restaurant floor and has sight lines to the office where Marco will be working. Lucia's expression was carefully neutral. You'd be able to see everything without being seen. So Valente was giving me a chance to observe his CFO in action, to see if anything seemed off. Smart. What time? 9 a.m. I'll drive you. After Lucia left, I opened the evidence bag and carefully extracted the burner phone. It was a cheap model, the kind you could buy at any convenience store for $40. No fingerprints. Marco had wiped it before stashing it, though apparently not carefully enough to avoid leaving trace DNA. I powered it on. The call log showed exactly what Valente had told me: dozens of calls to that one number over 3 weeks, plus a handful of calls to other numbers that appeared to be for pizza delivery and a taxi service. The messages were more interesting. Most were encrypted, showing only as strings of random characters. But 3 messages weren't encrypted brief exchanges that Marco had either forgotten to encrypt or thought weren't important enough to bother with. Au 22, 10:47 de l'après-midi, everything set for Tuesday? Yes, she'll be there. Table 6. Au 28, 3:15 de l'après-midi. The product. Arrived. Very discreet. Good. Remember enough to kill, but slow enough to seem natural. 7, 8:33 du matin. She survived. Your doctor friend saved her. Complications. We'll handle. I read the messages 3 times, pulse accelerating with each pass. Your doctor friend saved her. They knew Valente would save me. They'd counted on it. This wasn't about killing me and pinning it on Valente. This was about something else entirely. Something more complex. I grabbed my notepad, started sketching out possibilities. Scenario 1. Someone wanted me alive but compromised. Poisoning me in Valente's restaurant would force him to save me, creating a connection between us that could be exploited later. Scenario 2. Someone wanted to test Valente's response. Would he save me or let me die? Either way, it revealed something about his priorities. Scenario 3. Someone wanted me investigating from inside Valente's organization. They knew I'd been investigating him externally for months. Poisoning me would. I forced me into his protection, giving me access to information. I couldn't get any other way. All 3 scenarios suggested the same thing. This wasn't about my investigation at all. Or rather, my investigation was a tool, not the target. Someone was playing a much longer game. The question was, who? And what was their endgame? I was still pondering this when my phone, the new one Valente's people had given me, buzzed with an incoming call from an unknown number. I stared at it. Unknown numbers didn't call people in witness protection, which is essentially what I was. Against my better judgment, I answered. Hello? Silence. Then distorted by what was clearly a voice modulator. Did you enjoy the scallops, Miss Santos? My blood turned to ice. Who is this? Maya Santos, an investigative food critic, was poisoning someone with arsenic while reviewing Osteria Note, a restaurant owned by Mafia boss Dominic Valente. For 3 months, she'd been secretly investigating Valente's money, the laundering operation through his restaurant empire, driven by her sister Elena's death from food poisoning 7 years earlier due to restaurant corruption. In desperation, Maya wrote, "poisoned" on a napkin and slid it to Valente at table 9. He immediately recognized the threat and had his personal doctor treat her, saving her life. Maya woke in Valente's secure medical facility, where he revealed he'd confiscated all her investigation evidence and proposed a deal. Help him find the traitor in his organization who poisoned her, and he'd help her discover who wanted her dead. Maya discovered financial irregularities pointing to embezzlement, $1 million payment to a shell company, and suspicious activity at Bella Vista restaurant. She then received a threatening call demanding she spy on Valente and destroy him from within, or be killed. This confirmed someone was orchestrating chaos to start a war between crime families. Marco Santoro, Valente's CFO, appeared innocent when Maya interviewed him, revealing that Angela Chen, operations manager at Adriatic Import Group, had disappeared. Marco showed evidence of Angela's secret relationship with Dmitri Volkov, nephew of rival crime boss Dmitri Volkov, suggesting the Volkov organization was behind everything. Valente proposed taking Maya to a charity auction where she'd meet Dmitri Volkov socially, acting as bait to make him uncertain and force mistakes. Despite the danger, Maya agreed, motivated by justice for her sister and a growing complicated connection to Valente. She demanded one condition. After the auction, Valente must truthfully explain why he saved her life. He agreed. The story positions Maya between two forces, one wanting her to investigate Valente from outside, another demanding she destroy him from inside, while she navigates a dangerous world where justice and survival require impossible compromises. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work, so if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel.